major political or economic event. Radio Algeria International, our voice in the world.
This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
In today's top stories, messages and telephone calls congratulating the President of the Republic, Abdelmadjid Tebboune, on the occasion of his re-election for a second term in office continued to pour in as a new victory on the road to reconsolidating the democratic process. Algeria has called on the international community in Geneva to take action to bring about a ceasefire, take measures against the Zionist occupation, and to put an end to its impunity. The Israeli occupation forces are stepping up their wanton aggression on different cities, villages and refugee camps in the occupied West Bank. Hello and welcome on Radio Algeria International. I'm Jamal Salmani. Messages and telephone calls congratulating the President of the Republic, Abdelmadjid Tebboune, on the occasion of his re-election for a second term in office have continued to pour in from foreigners and heads of state wishing him every success in his mission, while reiterating their willingness to strengthen cooperation and bilateral relations. The President of the Republic received a telephone call from His Highness the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, who renewed his warm congratulations on his re-election for a second term. Similarly, the President of the Republic, Abdelmadjid Tebboune, received a telephone call from his brother, the former Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ahmed Talib Ibrahimi, who congratulated him for his victory in the presidential election and wished him every success in his endeavors. The President of the Republic also has received a letter from the Emir of the State of Qatar, His Highness Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, handed to him by the Qatari ambassador to Algiers. The meeting took place in the presence of the Director of Cabinet at the Presidency of the Republic, Boualem Boualem. Meanwhile, President Tebboune has received the ambassador of the State of Kuwait, Mohammed El Shabu, who paid him a farewell visit at the end of his mission in Algeria. Speaking after the meeting, the ambassador of the State of Kuwait said that he was honored meeting the President Abdelmadjid Tebboune, who took a great interest in his meeting.
I had the honor to be received by President Abdelmadjid Tebboune. The meeting aroused the President's interest and he expressed his pride in the relationship that links him to his brother Mash'al Jaber As-Sabah, hoping that the relationship will be translated at the level of economic cooperation and the strengthening of the transport of Algerian goods and everything related to the commercial sector.
With the renewal of popular confidence in the President of the Republic, Abdelmadjid Tebboune, in the presidential election of the 7th of September, Algeria has won a new victory on the road to consolidating the democratic process, writes the magazine El Jaish. The magazine, in its September issue, notes Algeria has scored another victory on the road to consolidating the democratic process following the resounding success of the presidential election of the 7th September 2024, which saw the renewal of popular confidence in the person of the President of the Republic, who was re-elected for a second term. The details in this report by Said Bougazi.
The magazine El Jaish points out that the sovereign Algerian people have decided by giving their vote to the president to continue the process of far-reaching and progressive reforms that he began during his first term of office, which was rich in achievements. In its editorial entitled Another Triumph for the New Algeria, El Jaish mentions that the National People's Army, along with the other security services, contributed to the success of this important event by securing the electoral process and ensuring that all the conditions were in place for the Algerian people to express their free choice throughout the country in an atmosphere of tranquility, calm and peace. For the magazine, this peace enjoyed by our homeland, which has been definitively consolidated, will undoubtedly enable it to face up to the major challenges looming on the horizon as part of an ambitious strategy aimed at achieving the hoped-for renewal and overall national development for which our country has all the factors for success in security and stability. In this respect, Edjej emphasized that this is a prospect that opens the way to the achievement of the hopes and aspirations of the Algerian people in the revitalization of all sectors thanks to the concerted efforts of all the children of Algeria, their solidarity and their awareness of the dangers we may face because of the disruptions and tensions prevailing on the regional and international scenes by closing ranks under the aegis of the country's command, so that Algeria will always continue to thwart any attempt to target it and hinder its rebirth and progress. We cannot speak of Algeria's victory without underlining the important role played by the ANP as a vanguard of the constitutional institutions, said the publication, in tune with our country's progress, providing confidence and security to continue along the right and proper path through the tireless and continuous work with competence and dedication, constantly striving to strengthen its operational readiness, improve its combat capabilities, and enhance its performance in the face of potential threats to the security and safety of our country, as also emphasized by the Chief of Staff of the ANP, Army General Saeed Shengriha. The editorial also notes that our country remains faithful to its immutable principles inspired by the values of its glorious revolution, including support for just causes with the Palestinian and Sahrawi causes at the forefront, recalling the message of the President of the Republic on the occasion of the celebration of the 62nd anniversary of the recovery of national sovereignty, in which he underlined that Algeria has regained the image that befits it at regional and international level.
President Abdelmadjid Tebboune has received a special envoy and North and Middle East advisor of French President Emmanuel Macron, Ms. Anne-Claire Legendre, who was carrying a letter from the French President to the President of the Republic. Now, Prime Minister Nadir Al-Arbawi has chaired a government meeting devoted notably to examining the measures taken to complete, as a matter of urgency, the operation to take stock of the losses and damage caused by the floods in several of the country's provinces in implementation of the instruction issued by the President of the Republic. In addition, the government continued its examining of the preliminary draft law on the budget settlement for the past financial year, which it debated at its meeting on the 7th of August 2024. The government also heard a communication on the state of implementation of the strategy relating to the development of port management and examined a draft executive decree amending and supplementing executive decree number 04381 of 28 November 2004, laying down the rules for the road with the aim of introducing several measures to promote road safety, reinforce the safety of people and property, and facilitate administrative procedures for the benefit of Algerian nationals living abroad. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International, and as you followed in our top stories, Algeria has called on the international community in Geneva to take action to bring about a ceasefire, take measures against the Zionist occupation to put an end to its impunity, to guarantee the Palestinian people's right to self-determination and the establishment of their independent state with Al-Quds as its capital. This position was expressed by Algeria's permanent representative to the United Nations Office and international organizations in Geneva, Rachid Bledhen, at the 57th session of the Human Rights Council.
Algeria condemned the crimes of genocide committed against the Palestinian people amid a shameful international silence. Despite the relevance of the advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice, which has recognized that the Israeli occupation is committing crimes of apartheid, Algeria calls on the international community to act to bring about a ceasefire, to take coercive measures against the Israeli occupation, and to put an end to its impunity and the occupation of the Palestinian territories and other Arab territories, and to guarantee the right of the Palestinian people to self-determination and the establishment of their independent and fully sovereign state with Al-Quds as its capital.
Mr. Bladhan also expressed Algeria's deep concern about the human rights violations against the Sahrawi people, calling on countries to comply with international law.
Algeria expresses deep concern at the stalemate in the political process for the decolonization process in Western Sahara, the human rights violations against the Sahrawi people, and the attempt to impose the occupation as a fait accompli policy. We call on countries to comply with international law. We insist that the Western Sahara question is a question of decolonization. This region remains under the authority of the United Nations as provided for by international law.
Mr. Bladhan also pointed out that Algeria was continuing its political and economic reforms in order to anchor the democratic nature of the new Algeria, which aims to strengthen the rule of law and the independence of the judiciary, fight corruption, modernize public administration, and to foster the emergence of a free and responsible civil society, adding that as a consecration of this democratic character, on the 7th of September 2024, Algeria organized a presidential election, of which the preliminary results have been submitted to the Constitutional Court for validation. Now, in other news, the toll of the Zionist genocidal aggression against the Gaza Strip has increased to 41,118 martyrs and 95,125 wounded since October 7th. According to the same sources, the Zionist occupation army has committed 3 massacres in the last 24 hours in the Gaza Strip, claiming 34 deaths and 96 wounded. The United Nations organization has reported that the Zionist occupation army attacked for the 5th time in 11 months a school belonging to the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees, UNRWA, in the Nusayrat refugee camp in the center of the Gaza Strip, where displaced civilians had found refuge. During his daily press briefing, the spokesperson of the UN Secretary-General Stéphane Dujarric referred to this attack by the Israeli occupation forces against the UNRWA school.
In Gaza, an Israeli airstrike hit an UNRWA school being used as a shelter, the new Nusayrat school in Gaza. The site had been previously deconflicted with Israeli security forces. This is the 5th strike on the same location in the past 11 months. We're trying to confirm reports that some UNRWA staff members were killed in the attack. In the Tulkarm and Nur Shams refugee camps, more than 2.6 kilometers of water and sewage networks were bulldozed during the operation, severely hindering access and delivery of essential services. OCHA reports more than 33,000 residents have been coping with water cuts and sewage flooding over the past 2 weeks.
That was the spokesperson of the UN Secretary-General, Stéphane Dujarric. The United Nations Relief Agency and Works for Palestine Refugees in the Near East, UNRWA, has warned that the lack of education in the Gaza Strip, subjected to savage Zionist aggression, expose the children of the besieged Palestinian enclave to the risk of becoming a lost generation, Said Bouazi reports.
UNRWA's Commissioner General Philippe Lazzarini recalled in a message published on the platform X that after the beginning of the Zionist aggression, UNRWA had to close its schools and turn them into accommodation centers for displaced Palestinians. Lazzarini wrote that the classrooms that used to accommodate children are now either full of displaced families or destroyed. The desks were replaced by beds, and many schools are no longer places for learning. They have become places of despair, hunger, disease, and death. Recording that half of the approximately 600,000 school children in the Gaza Strip were educated in UNRWA schools before the Zionist aggression, Lazzarini drew attention to Palestinian children who could not go to school during the new school year because of these assaults. The longer children stay away from school in the rubble of the devastated place, the more likely they are to become a lost generation, said Philippe Lazzarini, adding that the children of the Gaza Strip deserve to learn to be children like other children.
The World Food Programme has warned that the humanitarian operations in Gaza have become more difficult than ever with the approach of winter, adding the violence against aid workers is stifling efforts to prevent famine in the Palestinian enclave. At a press conference in New York, WFP Regional Director for the Middle East, Corinne Fleischer, mentioned some of the obstacles facing humanitarian workers.
Humanitarian operations have become ever more difficult to carry out. When I was there, it took us 8 hours to reach from Deir el-Balach to the northern crossing, what normally takes 40 minutes. We face endless hours to receive a green light to move. Then we spend hours at waiting points, at holding points, at checkpoints. Roads are destroyed. People are on the road, as I said. We had two flat tires when we were on that trip. And now the winter is coming, and it's becoming even more difficult. Roads will become impassable. In the last month since I left, we've seen more evacuation orders and the massive deterioration of the security environment for humanitarian staff.
That was WFP Regional Director for the Middle East, Corinne Fleischer. The Israeli occupation forces are stepping up their wanton aggression on different cities, villages and refugee camps in the occupied West Bank, including Tubas Governorate for the second day in a row, the town of Tamun and the city of Tulkarem and its camp. The details with Said Bougazi.
Wafa said that the occupation forces are still deployed heavily in the neighborhoods of Tubas city, as there is a large deployment of snipers and infantry units in addition to converting a number of buildings into military barracks. 5 young men were killed yesterday morning after being bombed by an Israeli drone near At-Tawhid Mosque in Tubas city. In conjunction with the continued siege and storming of Tubas, the occupation forces stormed El Farah camp south of Tubas at midnight, where local resident Sufyan Jawad Abdul Jawad, 46, was killed. The occupation forces also deployed snipers and infantry soldiers in the camp and began raiding several citizens' homes, while the occupation bulldozers caused destruction and damage to the infrastructure in the camp. Since yesterday until now, the occupation forces have stormed the town of Tamun several times and carried out raids and searches of citizens' homes, and several citizens were detained and later released. Since the occupation began its military operation in the northern West Bank on August 28, 16 Palestinians have been killed in the Tubas governorate. Elsewhere in the West Bank, 3 Palestinians were killed yesterday evening in Zionist drone bombings that targeted a Palestinian vehicle in Al-Kataba suburb east of Tulkarem city. The occupation forces continue their aggression on the city and camp of Tulkarem amidst sending more military reinforcements to them and flying reconnaissance planes at low altitudes. Wafa correspondents said that the occupation forces continue besieging the Martyr Thabet governmental hospital in the city, as their vehicles are stationed at the main emergency entrance, obstructing the work of ambulance crews and patients as they enter or leave the hospital and subjecting them to interrogation.
Today, the world is celebrating the International Day of South-South Cooperation. South-South Cooperation is a manifestation of solidarity among peoples and countries in the South that contributes to their national well-being, their national and collective self-reliance, and the attainment of internationally agreed development goals, including the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. This year's celebration is being held under the theme A Better Tomorrow through South-South cooperation. On the International Day of South-South Cooperation, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has addressed a message in which he had this to say.
On the United Nations Day for South-South Cooperation, we celebrate the transformative power of unity and solidarity among developing nations. We remember that only together can countries leverage multilateral support and realize shared prosperity. South-South cooperation does not reduce the responsibility of wealthier nations to help tackle global inequalities. It does not replace North-South cooperation, but strong South-South partnerships, along with triangular cooperation, are crucial to building a better future for all. These partnerships can advance a fairer, more inclusive global financial system that responds to the challenges faced by developing countries. They can help unlock the power of digitalization, data, and science-backed solutions for sustainable development.
That was the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres speaking. And next is a program highlighting the life of Algerian writer Mouloud Faraoun.
Our Talk, a weekly program with guests,